The rain had been falling all afternoon, soft but steady, tapping against the windows of the small cafe where Ana de Armas sat alone. She had pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders, but the cold was not the reason she felt uneasy. Her phone lay on the table in front of her, screen dark, battery dead. Outside, the streets of downtown were almost empty, the kind of quiet that felt wrong for a city that usually never slept. It had started with a simple meeting, an audition that was supposed to last no more than an hour. She had walked in with her script and walked out with a feeling she couldn't quite explain. Not fear exactly, but a growing awareness that someone was following her. First, it was a shadow she noticed across the street. Then it was the same figure she saw near the bus stop. Now, she was certain. Whoever it was had followed her into this part of town, a place she didn't know well. Ana tried to calm her breathing, telling herself it was nothing. She stirred her coffee slowly, the spoon clinking against the cup. But her mind kept replaying the moments from earlier. The sound of footsteps that matched hers. The way the man had looked at her in the glass reflection of a shop window. Her thoughts were interrupted when the cafe door opened, letting in a gust of cold air. She glanced up and froze. The man she had been trying not to notice stepped inside. He was tall, his coat soaked from the rain, and his eyes swept the room before landing on her. Ana's hand moved toward her bag. She didn't know if she should leave or stay. The man began walking toward her table, but before he could reach her, another figure appeared from behind him. Keanu Reeves stepped into the cafe without a word. He wasn't dressed like a movie star. His black jacket was plain, his jeans slightly worn, but there was something about his presence, calm, steady, watchful, that filled the space between them. He didn't look at Ana right away. Instead, he walked past her table and stood near the counter, just close enough that she felt his presence like a wall between her and the man approaching. The man hesitated. Keanu turned his head slightly, meeting his eyes with a look that was not aggressive, but carried a quiet warning. No words, no sudden movements. But something in that gaze made the man stop mid-step. Ana's heart was pounding. She didn't know if she should thank him or stay silent. Keanu didn't speak. He simply stepped aside, letting the man walk out of the cafe. The bell above the door rang softly as it closed, leaving behind only the sound of rain and the low hum of the coffee machine. Keanu finally turned toward her. "You're okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost gentle. Ana nodded, though her hands were still trembling. I think so," she said. He sat down across from her, resting his hands on the table. "You don't have to explain," he said. "But you're not walking home alone tonight." There was no arrogance in his tone, no sense of control, only a quiet certainty that made her feel, for the first time that day, that maybe she could breathe again. Still, questions swirled in her mind. Why was Keanu Reeves here? How had he noticed? And why would he step in for someone he barely knew? Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, the air seemed warmer now. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything would change. The start of something that would test her trust, her strength, and the limits of kindness itself. The cafe felt safer now, but Ana knew she couldn't stay there forever. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, more for comfort than warmth, as Keanu glanced out the window. His eyes scanned the street like he was reading a language only he understood. "We should go," he said softly, as if the decision was already made. Ana hesitated. What if he's still out there? "Then we make sure you're not alone," Keanu replied. It wasn't just the words. It was the way he said them, steady and without doubt, like someone who'd seen worse situations and knew how to handle them. They stepped outside together. The rain had turned to a fine mist, coating the streets in silver reflections. The air smelled of wet concrete and distant car exhaust. Ana pulled her coat tighter, her steps quickening without meaning to. Keanu walked at an easy pace, not too fast, not too slow, always keeping just enough distance to give her space but close enough that she knew he was there. At the corner, they stopped. Keanu's gaze swept the street again, pausing for a moment before he nodded for her to continue. "You live far from here?" he asked. "About 15 minutes," she said. Then quickly added, "Walking." He tilted his head slightly. "Then we'll take the long way. Fewer dark alleys." Anna didn't argue. Every few blocks, she caught herself glancing over her shoulder. Twice, she thought she saw the same shape lingering in the distance, but each time, by the time she looked again, it was gone. They passed closed storefronts with peeling posters in the windows. Neon signs buzzed faintly in the wet night. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed, then faded. "Do you know him?" Keanu asked suddenly, his voice low but not invasive. Anna shook her head. "No, I've never seen him before today." She paused, remembering the uneasy feeling that had started hours ago. "It's like he decided to pick me out of the crowd and follow me. I don't even know why." Keanu didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked ahead, his expression unreadable. "Some people see kindness as weakness," he said finally. "They think they can take without asking. They're wrong." There was a firmness in his tone that made her wonder what experiences had shaped those words. They turned onto a quieter street, lined with trees that dripped rain onto the sidewalk. It was here that she noticed something. Keanu wasn't just walking. He was watching every shadow, every parked car, every movement in the corners of his vision. Suddenly she caught it, a faint reflection in a puddle behind them. A figure, moving when they moved, stopping when they stopped. Her breath caught. "He's still there," she whispered. Keanu's pace didn't change. "I know," he said calmly. "Keep walking." Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. "What are we going to do?" He gave the faintest smile. "Make sure he understands he chose the wrong person." As they approached the next intersection, Keanu guided her toward a small convenience store with bright lights spilling onto the wet pavement. "Go inside," he said. "Stay near the counter. I'll be right behind you." She didn't want to leave him, but something in his eyes told her this was the safest move. Anna stepped inside, the warm air and smell of instant noodles wrapping around her. Through the glass, she saw Keanu pause under the awning, hands in his pockets, waiting. A shadow approached from the other end of the street. The man. He slowed when he saw Keanu standing there. They exchanged no words, only a silent exchange of something far heavier. And then, in one sudden motion, the man turned and walked away into the rain. Keanu stepped inside the store, nodding toward the door. "Come on, we'll get you home." Anna wanted to ask how he had done it, what had passed in that wordless moment, but part of her didn't want to break the quiet understanding between them. As they walked the final blocks to her apartment, she realized something unexpected. She felt safer than she had all day, not because danger was gone, but because someone had chosen to stand in its way for her. Anna thought the night would end once she reached her apartment. She had pictured closing the door, leaning against it, and letting the fear finally melt away. But when she and Keanu stepped into the lobby of her building, the feeling didn't fade. The lobby was quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. A small puddle of rainwater had formed near the entrance from their wet shoes. Keanu stood just inside the door for a moment, scanning the street one last time before locking it behind them. "You're on the third floor?" he asked. "Second," Anna replied, her voice softer now. They walked toward the elevator, but Keanu stopped her with a slight shake of his head. "Stairs," he said simply. "Quieter." She followed without question. Her boots made soft sounds against the worn steps, while Keanu's stride was steady, unhurried, like he was counting each second between footfalls. Halfway up, Anna realized he was listening, not just to her, but to everything around them. When they reached her floor, the hallway stretched out in both directions, lined with doors and dim yellow lights. Her apartment was near the end. She pulled out her keys, but her hand froze just above the lock. The door was slightly open. Her stomach dropped. "I locked it this morning," she whispered. Keanu stepped forward, gently moving her aside. "Stay behind me." He pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was dark, except for the faint glow of streetlights seeping through the curtains. He stepped inside first, scanning each corner before motioning for her to follow. The living room looked untouched, but there was something in the air, a faint, unsettled feeling, as if the space remembered someone else's presence. Anna's eyes darted to the coffee table. Her script from the audition lay open, though she was sure she had left it closed. "Someone was here," she said, her voice trembling. Keanu knelt beside the table, his eyes narrowing. "And they wanted you to know it." The words sent a chill through her. This wasn't random. He stood and looked at her. "Pack a small bag," he said quietly. "Just the essentials. You're not staying here tonight." Anna's first instinct was to argue, but the memory of that shadow in the street silenced her. She moved quickly, grabbing clothes, her charger, and a few personal things. As she zipped the bag, she felt a strange mix of fear and trust. Fear of whoever was behind this, trust in the man who had stepped in without a word. They left the apartment as quietly as they had entered. On the way down the stairs, Anna glanced back once more, feeling as if the open door was watching her leave. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the city streets slick and shining under the dim streetlights. Keanu led her toward a side street instead of the main road. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere they won't think to look," he said. The way he said it made her realize this wasn't just kindness. It was something more. He was thinking ahead, planning for possibilities she didn't even want to imagine. As they walked, she caught his expression in the faint glow of the street lamps. Calm, but alert. It struck her that Keanu wasn't acting like this was the first time he'd dealt with trouble. Finally, they reached an older brick building tucked between two taller ones. Keanu pulled a small key from his pocket and opened the door. "You have a place here?" Anna asked, surprised. "Not mine," he said with a faint smile. "But it's safe." The lobby was small and warm, the smell of wood and old books filling the air. He led her up a narrow staircase to a modest apartment. Inside, it was simple: a couch, a small kitchen, shelves lined with records and paperbacks. "You can sleep here," Keanu said, placing her bag on the couch. "No one knows about this place." Anna sank into the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She looked at him, wanting to thank him again, but instead, she said the thing she had been thinking since they left the cafe. "Why are you helping me?" Keanu paused, his hand resting on the back of a chair. For a moment, she thought he might not answer. Then he said quietly, "Because there was a time I wished someone had done the same for me." Those words settled in her chest, heavy and unshakable. She didn't know his story, but she could feel the truth in it. Anna woke in the middle of the night, unsure of what had pulled her from sleep. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp in the corner. For a moment, she thought she was alone, but then she saw him. Keanu, sitting near the window in a wooden chair, his silhouette framed by the faint glow of the street outside. He wasn't asleep. His posture was calm but alert, like someone listening for sounds only he could hear. "Did you stay there all night?" she asked quietly. Keanu turned his head slightly, offering a faint smile. Someone had to keep watch. Anna sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "You really think he might try to find me here?" "I think," Keanu said slowly, "that when someone like that decides to follow you, they don't just stop because it's inconvenient. It takes something stronger to make them walk away for good." His voice carried no drama, no attempt to scare her, just honesty. Anna thought back to the cafe, to the moment the man had turned and left without a word after looking at Keanu. It had been more than luck. She wanted to ask what had passed between them, but something about Keanu's quiet manner told her he would tell her only when the time was right. He stood and walked to the small kitchen. "You should eat something. It helps when you're dealing with fear." She followed him, and together they made tea and warmed bread on the stove. The simple act of sharing food in the middle of the night felt strangely grounding, like a pause in a storm. As they ate, Anna found herself speaking without planning to. "When I was younger, I thought I was brave. I thought nothing could scare me if I kept moving forward. But tonight," she trailed off, shaking her head. "Fear doesn't mean you're not brave," Keanu said, looking at her with quiet conviction. "Bravery is moving anyway, even when you're scared." His words settled into her like a truth she had needed to hear for years. The rest of the night passed in small moments, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of cars on wet streets, the steady rhythm of Keanu's presence. Just before dawn, he stood and looked out the window again. "He's here," Keanu said simply. Anna's heart jumped. "What?" "Across the street," he murmured. "Same coat, same stance." She moved to the window but stayed hidden behind the curtain. And there he was, the man, standing under a flickering streetlight, as still as stone. "What is he waiting for?" she whispered. "For you to come back out," Keanu replied. "But that's not going to happen." Anna felt a shiver run through her. "So what do we do?" Keanu glanced at her, his eyes steady. "We change the rules. If he wants to follow, he's going to learn what that means." There was no anger in his tone, just a quiet certainty that made her realize something. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about ending the game before it could go further. He stepped away from the window and picked up his jacket. "Get some rest," he told her. "I'll be back." Anna's instinct was to tell him not to go, to ask him to stay where it was safe, but something told her that trying to stop him would be like trying to stop the tide. The door closed softly behind him, leaving her in the quiet apartment with the ticking of the clock and the knowledge that whatever happened next, the night had just shifted into something deeper. Anna didn't know how much time had passed since Keanu had stepped out into the pale morning light. She had tried to rest, but the thought of him out there with the man who had followed her made it impossible. She kept pacing the small apartment, pausing every few minutes to glance out the window. The street below looked calm at first glance, just a few early commuters, a delivery truck unloading boxes, the faint hiss of wet tires on asphalt. But she couldn't see Keanu. She couldn't see the man either. Her mind spun with possibilities. Had they talked? Had something happened? Was Keanu hurt? The not knowing was worse than anything she could imagine. Finally, she saw him. Keanu appeared from the side street, walking with that same steady pace, hands in his jacket pockets. His eyes swept the building as if checking every corner before he crossed toward the door. Anna opened it before he could knock. "Well?" she asked, her voice a mix of relief and tension. "He's gone," Keanu said simply, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. She searched his face for clues. "Just like that?" "Not just like that," he said, setting his jacket over the back of the chair. "We talked." Anna waited, but he didn't elaborate. "What did you say?" Keanu met her eyes, his voice calm. Enough for him to understand that following you wasn't worth the cost. Something in the way he said it made her realize it wasn't a threat, not in the way most people would think. It was something deeper, a message that cut through whatever the man thought he wanted. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked. "No," Keanu said without hesitation. "But that doesn't mean you stop paying attention. You keep your head up. You stay aware. Trouble doesn't always look like trouble at first." His words weren't meant to scare her, but to prepare her, and strangely, she felt stronger hearing them. They spent the rest of the morning in quiet. Keanu made coffee while Anna sat on the couch, watching the steam rise from her cup. Every now and then their eyes met, and she felt a silent understanding growing between them. After a while, she asked the question that had been on her mind since the night before. "You said once that you wished someone had done the same for you. What did you mean?" Keanu didn't answer right away. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant, like he was looking at something far away in time. "Years ago," he began slowly, "I was in a city I didn't know well. Someone decided I looked like an easy target. I didn't see it coming until it was too late. And when it happened, no one stepped in. No one even looked. I got through it, but it changed the way I saw people. I decided that if I ever had the chance, I wouldn't be one of the ones who looked away." Anna listened, the weight of his words settling deep in her chest. "So that's why you helped me." He shook his head slightly. "I didn't help you because of what happened to me. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. The past just made sure I didn't hesitate." There was no pride in his voice, no need for recognition, just truth. Anna realized then that what he had done for her wasn't about being a hero. It was about being human in a way that too many people forgot. As the day wore on, the city outside slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But for Anna, something had shifted. She no longer felt like the woman who had sat in that cafe, tense and uncertain. She felt steadier now, not because the danger had passed, but because she had seen what it looked like when someone chose to stand beside you without asking for anything in return. The following days passed more quietly than Anna expected. The man never returned. There were no shadows trailing her on the street, no flickers of movement in reflections, no footsteps matching her own. And yet, the memory of those days stayed sharp in her mind, as if her senses had learned to listen in a new way. Keanu stayed in the city for a while. He never said how long he planned to be there, and Anna never asked. Some mornings, they'd meet for coffee at the same cafe where they first crossed paths. Other times, he'd walk with her through busier streets, pointing out little things, a shortcut through a crowded market, a spot with better lighting at night, a corner where she should never linger. It wasn't just protection he gave her. It was awareness. It was confidence she had thought she lost. One evening, they stood on a small pedestrian bridge, watching the lights of the city ripple across the river. The air was cool, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't yet fallen. "You seem different," Keanu said quietly. Anna smiled faintly. "Maybe I just feel safer now." "You should," he replied. "But not because I'm here. Because you know what to do if trouble comes again." She thought about that. And what if it's not enough? He looked at her then, the kind of look that held no doubt. "Then you call me." It was the simplest promise, but something in it felt unshakable. Not because he said it like a hero, but because he said it like someone who meant it. A week later, they met for breakfast before he left the city. Neither of them called it goodbye. They talked about small things, films, books, music, but beneath it all was the quiet knowledge that they would see each other again, whether by chance or choice. As they walked out into the morning light, Anna stopped him. "You could have just stayed out of it that day," she said. "But you didn't. You stepped in without a word. Why?" Keanu smiled, that same calm, knowing smile. "Because sometimes words come after. First, you stand where you're needed." And then he was gone, walking down the street at that steady pace she'd come to recognize. Months later, when life had settled back into something like normal, Anna would still think of that night. The rain on the windows, the quiet presence that had stood between her and fear, the promise that needed no grand gesture to be real. Because in the end, it wasn't about a rescue. It was about the choice someone made to be there when it mattered most.